reunion of the West Coast Division of
It was terrific.
FWC alumni. This evening's bios and comments and reminiscences. We hope you enjoy it. So I went through high school here and heard about Friendswold College by word of mouth in what must still be kind of a mysterious fashion. It was just in a classmate in high school. She mentioned things like dumping freaks in New York for the weekend with $5.
Right.
Somebody actually did that, didn't
Right.
they?
Yeah.
Working with the Mau Mau, you know. Nobody knew what the Mau Mau was. It was like, you know, just like being a double agent with a terrorist organization or something, working with the Mau Mau. I was a real serious student till my last year or two of high school, and by the time I was through, I was really ready for something non-conventional. I got into political activism, founded a political club on campus, and so kind of kept a political ruckus going there all year long. We picketed the school during Peace Mobilization Week, and were suspended for 2 weeks. Got a list of faculty in the area that were supportive, and I contacted them before our 2 weeks, and we spent 2 weeks with a faculty member each morning and afternoon from San Jose State or Stanford or Berkeley. We had really better schools than the one we'd been kicked out of. I was ready for something different in an educational experience. I was one of the first students on campus at Mitchell Gardens. I came from kind of a very stable middle-class background. It was all a new high school I'd been into psychedelics and stuff, and when I got to New York, the experiences and environment and all opened my eyes so much, I just dropped everything. I said, I don't want anything to fog my vision. From then on, I think I just grew so much on life, so much on reality itself, that I didn't want anything to get in the way. I spent 6 months then in New York. Vera Vagus were there, and Keith, and
Richard Prosper.
yeah. We did a southern study trip, but this was really, they were afraid to do anything too serious, I think, with Tom Finley. Canoe trip down the Upper French Broad. From South Carolina to North Carolina. Had a good time. Went from there to Mexico. About 6 months in Mexico. Mexico was the place where my cultural consciousness was really expanded. We were living with families for 3 months. The center was pretty well established in Morelia. They broke it up after about 3 months because of the pilfering that Lynn mentioned. Living with what would be a Mexico middle-class family, for us would be lower middle class. And I knew Spanish probably better than anyone else in my class, just from study through school. So after the first month or so, I broke through the language barrier pretty well. But it was still a very frightening experience, probably because it was a third world country. And after that, I felt like my mind expanded, so kind of a comprehension then for third world countries and third world manner of thought and such. And that to me was really what Friendswold College developed and gave to me. And I went from there to Africa and then to India, about 8 months in Africa and 6 in India. Never really engaged in serious studies while I was there, apart from pretty serious study of history, language, and culture in each place that I was. And I felt that it really broadened my perspective in a good old Morris Mitchell global sense. You know, it didn't give me any academic tools of any kind, but it gave me tools to face life and to understand people and to conceive of the world as a single globe full of people with problems not too dissimilar, and all of them very interrelated. Anyway, after the 3 months in Morelia, which was an interesting experience, I actually had classes and stuff like that. It was an ongoing center. I mostly traveled for the rest of the time there, hitchhiking and such. We also spent time at Senora Gertrudis, whatever it is, there in San Cristobal de las Casas. In Africa, the center was equally going, and it wasn't broken up or reorganized till after the 6 months there. I spent
Where was the center?
Kataga, the old hotel. Beautiful. I loved that. That Africa was just the ultimate in terms of landscape and such. Just to wake up there and you're up at 10,000 feet within 10 miles of the equator. And so you've got kind of a stable year-round climate. A couple of weeks each on a government farm and on a private farm. And again, spent about a month traveling around hitchhiking stuff through. That was was wonderful then too, is you could travel through all of East Africa without any concern for currency or politics. Through Uganda, spent quite a bit of time in Tanzania, Mombasa, we hiked around Kilimanjaro for a day or two and gave up. Yeah. I left the school when the tuition program changed. They were paying for everything. It was the least expensive way to see the world anybody could ever imagine. Yeah. Out of tuition, which by then was $3,000, out of tuition came all travel expenses. We're talking about flights to and from Africa and India, etc. All of room and board. You know, it's like giving your parents some money and having them take care of you all over the world. Maybe it was a little too much like that, and also a bit like that in an academic sense. I'm encouraged that they're fostering independence in all those aspects now. I toyed with the idea of taking a Dow to India, but awfully, ever since I've thank God that I didn't do it, but I actually pursued it. It would have been a month with Arabs that didn't speak a word of English on an ancient sailing vessel. I ended up just steaming across on a boat for a week. And I followed a lot of my own agenda in India. I traveled to the north, spent some time in Karachi after getting ripped off in Delhi, and then traveled up into the land of Swat, the Pathans. India to me was becoming a mystical experience for me. Spent some time in an ashram, Amritsar. Then I spent probably about 3 months or so at the center, and again the center of Bangalore was. Is there still a center in Bangalore?
Yeah, it's restarted up.
A few months there, and then traveled some more, and then finished my time at another ashram at Tiruvannamalai, which is in the south. Having visited other ashrams beforehand, and left the school there. I just felt that I was being led off in other directions, and at that point I assumed without much question that those other directions were spiritual, mythical, that maybe I might just spend my whole life there in an ashram in a lotus position. But I didn't. I spent about a month. And I'm not sure what prompted me to come back. I'm sure my visa was up, and I didn't have any backing for staying. And I knew without a student deferment I'd have to face that. And that's what I ended up doing. I spent 2 or 3 months working on a CO. Finally got CO status probably based on more my background with the Quaker Church for 3 or 4 years before the school, and then with the school itself. This draft board was much more lenient in terms of alternative service than many. I had heard of a commune in Arizona before I was granted CO status. I had visited it. It was a Christian-based commune. A lot of it totally new and bizarre to me. Some of it I didn't bother focusing on. But a lot of it that I could apply directly to my experience in the Far East in terms of giving up yourself and isolating from the world. It was one in which everyone pooled their worldly goods. Nobody called anything their own, this type of thing. It appealed to me. I felt at that point on a short-term basis, just as a way to occupy myself on my way back to India. That was still very much in my mind. And I went there, and it was accepted as alternative service. So my first 2 years there satisfied that. Actually, before the first year was through, I unpacked my knapsack. Christian theology was beginning to sink into me, and their own particular doctrine. I ended up staying there for 9 years, which is to say I felt like I would never leave. After the first year and a half or so, I felt like this was my place to be for the rest of my life. It's a communal environment. We were largely self-supporting. Bought a lot of the produce and grains as such wholesale, so that we lived quite inexpensively, and grew some fruits and vegetables and stuff on hand. Had a date culture. I got into beekeeping. We became heavy honey producers. Rather incredible. We were always doing construction. I had a great time in the physical sense. In the spiritual sense, the basis was you had to be perfect to please God. Which, needless to say, is if you believe it, and there wasn't any sense staying there a minute if you didn't, could become very frustrating and develop a great deal of emotional strain. I had many varied and wild and unusual experiences there because it was such an offbeat place itself, with the kinds of people that would come through. And again, really felt like I would never leave there until this inner struggle with this philosophy and my relationship with Don developed. This was a celibate community when I finally left, and Don left shortly thereafter. I came back up here. This is where my family was, and we got married within 3 months of leaving. Got a job. I was working in maintenance at a convalescent hospital. Within a year, quit work to go full time to school. Got a bachelor's degree in '85 actually in computer science. Working at a small company here called Ask Computer Systems. What's great is that we don't sit down and program, day after day, but we're actually involved in customer installations, customer classes. It's a real laid-back Silicon Valley company with the Friday afternoon beer busts and all that. Aaron is 3.5 and Ryan's 1.5. We're right close to the city park with a children's library with the little tables and chairs, and a children's theater where kids from age 4 through high school and older can take part. Children's museum with science classes. Friendsville College gave me this global perspective, something that you see lacking in Americans generally, of course, but also that I think is necessary for a realistic outlook on life and towards people. It also gave me a great zest for life. From my first moments there, life has just been exciting, but I haven't wanted to miss a minute of it.